Incident 0 Debrief. It is time to give a more in-depth description and explanation for what has been termed Incident 0. It has been named this because it is the precursor to Incidents 1 and 2 that are run later on the bridge, at OT3. So aptly, this would be called Incident 0 as it comes before both of these, and not being discovered until now, can be considered to be retroactive. Unlike the other incidents, that are only implants and take place over a short amount of time, this incident is a whole entire series of events that took place over a period of approximately 100 quadrillion years. Now, to avoid any confusion, I will start at the beginning and move forward, retrospective to present time. This series of events began about 850 quadrillion years ago, and in the universe that existed before this one. With this universe being almost completely the same as our own, with the exception that they had quadrillions of years to develop and become technologically advanced, far in excess to what we see today. The whole entire universe was controlled and governed by an intergalactic confederation, headed by 13 senators who resided in the central galaxy of the universe, and were the heads of households of what we consider in this universe to be extraterrestrial lifeforms. These households were further composed of 4 major subdivisions of biological beings that were more prone to survival and evolution than other species. There were humanoids, insectoids, reptilians, and avian-based biological lifeforms, with many other subspecies and hybrids in between, with the actual senators themselves being spiritual terrestrials. At the point of approximately 850 quadrillion years ago, the previous universe began to deteriorate and degrade, to the point that it was then dying and on the brink of total destruction, which will happen to any given universe if it exists long enough, because as its stars begin to go supernova and form black holes, it will eventually end up with an overall gravitational force that culminates in what is known as a white hole, Big Bang. For the next 50 quadrillion years, there were ongoing wars with different factions and divisions struggling over dwindling space and resources. As the intergalactic senators stood by and did nothing, because having obtained ascension, becoming spiritual terrestrials, they had obtained a state in which they could never die, and believed themselves to be immortal and indestructible. In the process of this, the Arachnean home world was destroyed due to the inaction of these senators. Arachneans were giant spiders of the insectoid family, and were the best technologists of their time, with the only survivor being Lord Aranus, who was the 13th senator and the head of his household. He was also the individual responsible for the technological breakthroughs that made the transition to spiritual terrestrial possible, a process that was closely guarded and only known to the senators themselves. So fast forward to 800 quadrillion years ago, and the whole entire universe had now taken refuge in center of the universe, hoping somehow the senators could do something to save them. In what was a floating, or what some refer to as an Emerald City, the senators then came to Lord Aranus for a solution, as he was the high technologist and the only one left alive that could potentially save them all. He did come up with a solution to the problem that would have beings sent through time warps, and past the point of the destruction of the prior universe, and into the next one, but the senators wanted to abuse this by only allowing individuals through that fit certain qualifications, with the only downside to utilizing this technology being if an individual was not allowed to go through one of the time warp portals, they would be driven insane as a being in the process of going through the white hole. At the universe's eventual destruction, having lost all of his own people, Lord Aranus could not allow this to happen by following their orders and decided to take another action entirely, but was found out before he was able to carry it out and imprisoned. He had decided that he would detonate an antimatter bomb which would precipitate the white hole they were all trying to avoid. And even though it would drive all the beings insane in the process, they would survive and proceed to the next universe with an equal chance to create and thrive. 12 other beings from the individual households then assisted him by breaking him free from his imprisonment, and fought their way into a high-security area, in order to detonate the previously mentioned antimatter bomb. In conjunction with this, the senators began implanting the lesser citizens under martial law, by having them all go into their equivalent of movie theaters, and watching images on the screen while being covertly sprayed with gas that would euthanize them. This was done so that nobody would remember what had been done to them at a later date, as the senators would be immune to the effects of the Big Bang, and believed they would continue to reign supreme in the following universe. But Lord Aranus was successful in his endeavors with the help of his friends, and everything and everyone was then sucked into a giant black hole that turned to a white hole, and spewed everything out the other end, causing all beings to go insane for another 50 quadrillion years, making them compulsively and forcefully mock things up in the process, creating what we know as our universe. There are some points that should be noted about this incident. The exact point of being was at just before being pulled into the Big Bang, is the same point at which their reactive mind is formed. Running somebody down into this area, with any auditing methodology, to the point to where they detach from their reactive mind, will achieve a state of stable clear. If this is not done, a being will mock up a reactive mind again, even if they have already gone clear or beyond on the Scientology bridge. The Big Bang is an electronics incident, and therefore the whole entire physical universe is an electronic implant, and should be handled accordingly. This is the reason why auditing was only so effective in the past, as the electronics phenomena needs to be handled in incidents, for them to completely erase. The 13 senators are alive and well today, having escaped the effects of the Big Bang. They have resurfaced and disappeared many times throughout this universe's almost endless history, affecting civilizations to a greater or lesser degree, since they no longer have their ruling households, or at least biologically and organically. They control people by what is known as spiritually, on a theta line basis. All life and beings, including all the laws and rules that govern the physical universe, have been mimicked this side of the Big Bang and in this universe. And while we can break outside of and overcome some of these constraints, it is only possible to a limited degree unless a very large number of beings are able to break general reality. Which means that if we all do not ultimately make it, then none of us will. The same exact pattern has been repeated on multiple occasions, and in multiple other previous universes. Many refer to these other iterations of the same pattern as eternities, being that we now know and understand this data, and that we know it this early on in the cycle of the universe. We have the unique opportunity to be able to develop the technology and infrastructure necessary to break free from the trap. The previous universe is the relative beginning of creation as we know it, and is the true story behind all the great philosophies and mystical practices throughout the ages. In those practices and stories can be found bits and pieces of it, and in everything that we see around us. It is the ultimate truth, salvation, and reason why we find ourselves here currently. Thank you very much for following this explanation. See you next video. Ciao.